Hey everybody, Evan Narcisse and Stephen Totilo here. Back to talk about comics one more time. Not one more time, plenty more times.
For the last time ever. Until the next time.
Because you demanded it. What other bombastic comic book cover lines can we use?
Enough said.
In a world he never made. So we're going to talk about three comics today. One of which Stephen actually gave me for my birthday, and I wound up loving, and that's Copra by Michel Fief. I hope we're saying his name right. And we're also going to be talking about Daredevil, the most recent issue that came out last week, which we have digitally. Copra was really interesting to me because I heard about it from friends who were loving it, and I only read it after you gave it to me.
Right.
And I guess the most succinct way I can talk about it is to say it has the kind of energy that I want out of like these superhero universe reboots, right?
Right. So it's a super indie comic.
Yes.
And I guess that was an unintentional pun because it's very indie. Like this comic here is a compilation of actually 3 issues of Copra by this guy Michel Fief, if we're saying that's how you say his name. And it's published by a comic book shop that's near, sort of equidistant to where Evan and I live in Brooklyn. So this is at Bergen Street Comics, and they actually published this compilation. And it's a one-man operation. The way it's put together, it feels like it could be a mini comic or something like that.
Right. It feels like something you'd find like in the alternative section of a comic book shop if you go to like a show like SPX. Where an artist is renting a table and selling comics he made in Xerox, like at a local Kinko's. Right.
But it actually reads like a really good mainstream comic, and what it is it's a riff on the Suicide Squad, which was I guess at this point legendary late '80s comic. The writer was John Ostrander. The artist for most of the run was Luke McDonnell. Am I getting that?
Yeah, I think that's right.
And it was the idea, which was not original to Suicide Squad, but was implemented extremely well, was the idea that a bunch of C-list or Z-list, really, supervillains from the DC universe were enlisted. They were all in prison, and they were told by the U.S. government, if you agree to go on these dangerous missions where you're probably going to die, we'll shave time off your sentence or even let you out.
Right.
And there were a couple of catches, like they had a handler named Amanda Waller who she kind of kept tabs on them remotely. They all had to wear bracelets, and if they left the team leader, because there was one guy who like wasn't a prisoner.
Right.
And if they left the team leader, it would blow up, right?
Yeah.
And they'd lose a hand.
Right.
And as a kid reading it, like part of what like 10-year-old boy likes out of reading a comic like this was that somebody died in every issue because they could kill these. Ostrander could kill everybody because they were like nobody else was using these characters. But bit by bit, he created this amazing soap opera about these characters, these desperate ne'er-do-wells who
exactly the mix of personalities was really intense, and the tension between their quasi freedom and some of them actually wanting to be heroic, some of them actually being suicidal, some of them being killers filled with remorse and wanting to wipe the slate clean. So it was really good stuff happening in that book, and FIFA captures that energy, but also does something really weird and really fun in this book, which is he is. It feels like something torn from the post of like fanfiction.net, right? Where there's characters who are crossing over between universes because he's making this all up. So the characters that we see are analogs to familiar characters like Captain Boomerang, like Deadshot.
Dr. Light, looks like Dr. Light. Right. And so when we're saying this is like Suicide Squad, it's very much like Suicide Squad. It begins with a bunch of criminals that are together on a mission.
Right.
Stuff goes wrong. People are dying.
Yeah.
It could have been a few more issues of Suicide Squad. There was a reveal near the end of the book where I'm like, oh, that character is actually that character from Suicide Squad. I mean, it tracks very closely as if these could have been like lost issues. But they have, I mean, they're drawn and painted and colored in just this beautiful way that feels very primitive in a way, would you say?
Yeah, I know what you're going for. It feels unpolished, right? Where one of the knocks against, mainstream superhero art styles nowadays is that they feel like all driven by the same sensibility. Like, the DC House art style is basically like Jim Lee and subordinates, right? Like it feels like people who are riffing off of his vision of what a superhero costume, superhero body.
Right, and Ivan Rice or somebody like that, his art is very similar.
Right.
Sort of like the main guys they have there.
And the same thing with Marvel too. I think there's they hew to a look that is kind of formulaic, and none of that formula exists here. Even if the characters are basically stand-ins for like the Punisher or stuff like that.
Yeah, and we'll show some pages. And
Yeah.
But even the coloring, though, struck me. I mean, sometimes it feels like it's watercolors. Sometimes it feels like it's crayons and magic markers.
Right, it gets psychedelic. It's really, really fun. It's like, if you've drifted away from superhero comics recently, this is the kind of thing.
If you can find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good luck. He also has this series, which I haven't read. Have you read this one? Zegas.
No.
I realized I had this at home, and it's the same guy. And there's been stacks of this. At
Your
Bergen
stack
Street
of
Comics
unread
as well.
comics must be like insane.
It's totally ridiculous. Yeah.
But like I was saying, if you feel like you've drifted away from superhero comics, what made you love superhero comics, Copra's an excellent argument for hanging on and continuing to engage with that stuff. At least it is in my opinion.
Right, and if you hate what DC's been doing lately, and join the club, this is like an alternate look at where DC could have gone. And this would have been like weird in its own way, but I don't know. They should have tried that.
Yeah,
Should've hired that guy.
something as experimental as that, somewhere anyway. So the other book we want to talk about this week is Daredevil number 31. Came out last week. Yet another in Mark Waid's kind of tenure on the character, drawn by Chris Samney, right? And I think Javier Rodriguez as well. What interested me most about this book was it's hard to call it a bait and switch, but I thought I was getting one thing, a kind of typical supervillain centered like storyline, but it turned out to be something very different, and it turned out to be a little bit of social commentary and a real world event kind of, transported or made reference to in the storyline.
Yeah, let's just say what it is, because it's not literally the Trayvon Martin case,
right?
George Zimmerman case, but it's essentially that. And Daredevil being all about, Matt Murdock, his alter ego, being a lawyer and all that, they're primed actually to do a story that riffs off of that. And so what they're doing in the very early on in the issue is that a verdict comes down in a high-profile shooting of a young black teenager, and basically people are freaking out, and you expect this. Okay, the story's going to be maybe sort of Mark Waid hand-wringing about what really happened in the Trayvon Martin case.
Yeah.
But instead, something very different happens, where essentially, I'm going to give it away, okay?
Go ahead.
All right.
It's a week old.
The attorney who is prosecutor or who's defending the kid who was killed, he goes out on the court steps supposedly to call for calm, basically be like, let's be reasonable, let's not freak out. This is not the verdict we wanted, but let's not go crazy. But some supervillains intercept his press conference, and so they make it appear as if he holds up, here are the names and addresses and faces of the jurors.
Yeah.
Causes New York City to go into riot.
Yeah.
These jurors are now, public enemy number 1 through 9?
Yeah.
12?
12.
Number 1 through 12, yes.
12,
Like
yeah.
that. And how this becomes a Daredevil story and all that, you can read that. But I was not expecting a comic to pull something out of the news like that.
Yeah.
And I have read, most recently, I guess Nick Spencer was doing some stuff in that kind of messy Iron Man 2.0, where he would do a WikiLeaks thing or whatever. And some of it would work fairly well. Like, what would it be like if Julian Assange was going after the secrets that S.H.I.E.L.D. was keeping?
Right.
But a lot of it just feels clumsy and forced. Here, I mean,
not at all.
Waid is so good.
It was really good. From the, like you said, the opening pages where like people were standing around watching a TV waiting for the verdict to come down. That felt like real. Like I had that experience, watching the trial, Trayvon Martin trial, in these last couple of months when it was happening. Also, I felt like he got that beat of resignation. Like, oh, okay, justice was not served to some, depending on where you fall, and we're gonna just have to move on. And then the reversal that you mentioned, the call to riot, essentially, or call for like rough justice, was really kind of scary, because it is, comic books are fantasies, right? And that is a kind of fantasy that people have. So it was really chilling to see that. I mean, granted, there's a supervillain plot, but still, like, it's like, oh, this is what that would look like.
Yeah,
and
great point.
And it'd be really, really ugly. There was one bit of a grace note for me in this issue that I loved a lot, which was the name of the attorney that was prosecuting. was James Priest, and that's a reference to James Owsley, who changed his name to Christopher Priest, who was one of the first black editors at Marvel Comics, and he also went on to write a Black Panther run that I love. So that gave me like a little bit of goosebumps there. I thought it was a nice thing to do.
He wrote some good Green Lantern in
He
Action
did.
Comics
Yes,
Weekly.
he did. Yeah,
With Mark Bright.
that's
drawing
right.
it.
That's when Hal Jordan was a drunk, right?
That's where Hal Jordan went on Oprah, and she said in the series, I think this was before the whole Emerald Dawn drunk stuff.
Okay, he wrote some of that too. Go ahead.
He went on Oprah in the thing, and she's like, "So tell us, what are you afraid of?" And he says, "I'm not afraid of anything." And the whole studio audience just laughed at him. This is such an interesting turn of events. I'm pretty sure Owsley / Priest wrote that. Hopefully I didn't get that wrong, but I'm remembering comics I haven't thought about since 1988.
So this issue also reminded me of Hawkeye #7, which was set during Hurricane Sandy, and it's one of those things that people always say about the Marvel Universe, which is set in the real world, so they can attack these kind of things in a different way than DC or other publishers. That was a little bit different because the heroes were immediately inside the danger. This one, Daredevil was kind of riding on top of it, but it was a really strong issue. I mean, it's a different take on how superhero comics can like reflect the real world in a darker way, I think.
Yeah, I think it's definitely emphasizing one of the strengths that Marvel has in grounding their series in the real world universe, and also their strength at doing interesting storytelling with some of their lower powered characters.
Yeah.
You see that Marvel and DC also get tempted to tell these grand stories with, be it Thor or Superman or even Wolverine is written as a sort of ultra powerful character.
Yeah.
And a character like Daredevil or Hawkeye is written in such a way that they're really almost as close to as you can get to like a normal person who happens to carry a bow and quiver,
right,
or happens to
be a ninja lawyer.
Yeah,
blind ninja lawyer.
But I guess that being blind kind of grounds him. So it's definitely a strength of that. Good to see. By the way, third comic that you didn't mention that also based on real world events, Infinity 3, based on, of course, the real world invasion of Earth by Thanos. I liked how they worked that into the fictional version.
You remember where you were when that happened?
How could I forget, man? This is traumatizing when I saw Thanos come in.
All right, guys, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching.
But as with many good things, God starts with two people. But you can't directly control them. No, they've got minds of their own. The best you can do is gently guide them along their way, smashing up rocks and destroying trees for them. That won't do much good for your carbon footprint, but it's all in the name of progress, to clear space for your little computer people.